Well, hello there, amazing private practice owner. My name is Gerda Muller, and you are listening to the Private Practice Success Podcast. And this is episode number 60. Today, we're going to talk about a really interesting topic, and that is salutogenesis. I always need to say that slowly because otherwise I just slip over the word. And we're going to talk about salutogenesis in treatment as well as in business. So tell me, have you heard about this concept before? Yes or no? I first heard about salutogenesis. I'm sorry, I'm going to be so annoying by saying that word so slowly the whole time. But I first heard about this back in the early 2000s, which makes me feel really old right now when I think of it. But I heard it as part of my health psychology unit whilst doing my first year of my master's degree. And I clearly remember I absolutely loved health psychology. I don't know about you, but when I think back of my recollection to masters, it's actually funny looking back now because I remember, for example, sitting in my neuropsychology unit, learning all about the brain, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, learning how everything works together, the functions. And I was like fascinated. And I thought, I want to become a neuropsychologist one day because this is fascinating. Doing these assessments, writing these reports, it's like so interesting. And then we went on to play therapy and we learned about directed and undirected play therapy, filial therapy. And I went, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I want to become a child psychologist because the work that we can do, the impact we can have it's just life changing. I want to do that. I'm going to be a child psych. You're starting to notice a trend here? And then my university was really big on assessments. And then I learned all about assessments. And I went, I'm going to be an assessing psych. That's all I'm going to do. Maybe even work in forensics because that's where you do a lot of assessments. It's very independent. You can be really objective. And then I landed in the health psychology unit. And I absolutely loved it. I went, oh my goodness, it's people coming in. They having these health issues, stroke, heart disease, cancer, all of these things. And they are struggling with their mental health. And I can make such an amazing impact by supporting them through that. I'm going to go work at a hospital one day and I'm going to be a health psychologist. And like I said, it's funny for me looking back. It's like every new unit, I wanted to do something different. But now as a seasoned, use that word, seasoned, not old, seasoned and experienced psychologist, I look back and go, I think that is how it should be. I think that is probably the purpose of your master's degree, to give you a feel of all these various areas that you can work in order for you to make a really good decision about what you want to do when you leave university. And again, looking back, I feel like I've made the perfect choice being in private practice, because the beauty of private practice is that we can help all those clients. We can do neuropsych work. We can do health psychology work. We can work with kids. We can work in the forensic space. We can do assessments. And that's just once again why I love private practice. Why would people not work in private practice where you've got so much scope? You can go as broad as you want and you can go as niche as you want. Yeah, I just love private practice. I think you know that already, right? So thank you for going down that little rabbit hole with me. But yeah, I've got very fond memories of my master's time. Well, also really challenging memories because you need to work freaking hard to get through masters. But all in all, it was such an amazing experience for me as part of my career. Anyway, so I heard about and learned about salutogenesis as part of my health psychology unit. And I want to talk to you about this today, as I said, as it applies both in treatment, because that's obviously where I learned about it in its application. But I also want you to go with me as we put this filter through our business. because this is a private practice success, mainly business podcast. So it would be amiss of us not to look at it from both of those perspectives. So salutogenesis was first coined by Aaron Antonovsky, and I believe it was roundabout in the 1970s. And I'm going to try my best to explain it to you. Normally, when I explain it to clinicians at my practice, because this is one of the first concepts I would always teach my clinical team members during their clinical supervision. And I would normally be writing this down on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard that we have in our consult rooms. So I want you to imagine a clear piece of paper in front of you, and we're drawing a straight line from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So we've got this line, which is going to represent a continuum. On the left-hand side, I want you to imagine, or maybe if you're writing this down, if you're sitting at your desk, on the left-hand side, there's the word dis-ease or disease. And then all the way to the right, there's the word health-ease or healthy. So it's a basic continuum that goes from disease to healthy, or being in a state of dis-ease to health-ease. I also want you to make a mark in the middle of that line. And the middle of that line really marks the absence of mental health symptoms. And I want you to think about the clients that normally books in to come and see you or your team of clinicians. I would say that for the majority of psychology practices, the majority of clients that come and make an appointment are falling on the left-hand side of our piece of paper. So they're falling between disease or dis-ease and the middle point of an absence of symptoms. And the Medicare system is also set up to support that. So you need to have a mental health diagnosis in order to access treatment, in order to claim Medicare rebates, for example, to see your psychologist. So there has to be a presence of symptoms and a diagnosis. So the majority of people come and see us during that period. And then it's our job as psychologists, for example, me being a psychologist, to work with them and to meet them wherever they come in along that line and go, okay, let's benchmark. This is where you're at. This is the symptoms and what is your treatment goals. And now we're going to work with you, firstly, towards the absence of symptoms. But unfortunately, that is where a lot of people stop, because what tends to happen, I've done my 10 sessions that I get Medicare rebates for, so now I'm going to stop coming. And very often clients think like that because the clinicians think like that. They go, oh, you've come to the end of your sessions. Thank you and goodbye. That, I think, is irresponsible. And I actually think it's unethical work as a psychologist to do that. And I believe it's unethical because I believe in salutogenesis. I understand the concept and I can see the benefit that it has on the lives of the clients that we see at my practice. Because I see our job as helping professionals, yes, to meet people where they're at, to take them from a place of dis-ease or disease, to use that yucky word, so let's say dis-ease, and to work with them towards a place where they can go, yeah, look, my scores on the DAS has gone from severe, maybe moderate or extremely severe, even to the normal range. Because there's never going to be an absence of symptoms. Let me say that as well, right? Anxiety, depression, stress, it's normal human emotions. If you don't have it, then we've got a problem, Houston. So when I say that middle point is an absence of symptoms, I'm talking about the absence of symptoms that stop people from living their life, from going to work, looking after their kids, being normal humans. That's what I mean with that. But that's only part of our job. There is this whole right-hand side of this line and this piece of paper and of this continuum where we have a responsibility to be working in, where we need to tell clients, yes, you've done amazingly well. This is where we've gotten to, but this is how I can help you next. Because the purpose of life is not just to get rid of my depression and my anxiety and stuff. The purpose of life is to live a meaningful life, to live a life where you feel like you have a purpose, that you are contributing, that you are happy, that you are content in little pockets of moments. Yes, life can be hard, but your life needs to be meaningful, and you deserve a meaningful life. And as a psychologist, I'm here to help you with that as well. So needless to say, as a psychologist, I've got a very strong belief that clients that walk into my therapy room, that they are much, much more than just the symptoms and the diagnosis that they bring with them. Yes, it's my job to help them with that. That's first and foremost why they are coming to see me, because they're obviously really, really struggling, even suffering with what it is that they're going through. But that's just part of my job. And I also know that that's this chapter and season that they're in. And I know that there is so much more potential for them. So I see it absolutely as my job and my moral responsibility to show people that they're not broken, that we're going to work together to get you to a place of an absence of symptoms, like I've just defined, which meaning you can have a normal life. But you know what? That you can have more. You can have that stuff that you see and hear other people having. And I'm not talking about these well-curated lives on Instagram that we all know are super fake. I'm talking about having meaning and having purpose, and I can help. And I will always put my hand up and I'll communicate that to them. Obviously, it's their choice if they say yes or no. But as long as I know that I've advocated for their right to have it, then I know I have done my job, and that passes my can I sleep at night test. So I do hope that I've given you a good idea of what salutogenesis is. I've done the best I can, given that this is only the spoken word. Obviously, you are welcome to go and read up on this topic. I do believe from memory that Antonovsky actually has a book that he published called Health, Stress, and Coping, and it was published like towards the end of the 1970s, so it's a bit old, but I'm pretty sure it's still very valuable. You can just do a bit of a Google search. I'm sure you'll get some articles on the topic as well. So let's put this through our clinical filter. So what is the clinical application of this idea? Let's say I've convinced you and you've gone, I think this is a really cool idea, Gerda. I want to know more. How do we apply this clinically? Because I most certainly do. And as I said, I teach this to all the clinicians that I have supervised ever. So I'm going to touch on 3 important things. I'm sure it has way more ripple effects than only those 3. The first thing is that it prevents flight to health. Quick side note, if you are a group practice owner, please know that it is my mission to help you go from overwhelmed, overworked, and most probably underpaid to fully empowered and financially thriving. Helping you build a practice you can't stop smiling about is more than just a tagline in my world. It is what I do. So if you know that you want more from your business, if you know that you deserve more from your business, then today is the day I invite you to reach out. In the show notes, you will find a link to a super short triage form. Pop in your details. I will personally go through your responses and will get back to you ASAP to let you know how I can help. And if I can't, I'll point you in the right direction. Don't put your dreams on the back burner any longer. The sooner you start, the sooner I can help you get there. Now back to the episode. So one of the important conversations I would have with a client generally in session 2, when I am feeding back to them the results of their depression, anxiety, stress scale that I would have completed in session 1, I already have the flight to health conversation with them because I know therapy works. If you follow evidence-based best practice interventions, people will get better. Yes, it's sooner and faster for certain people depending on what's happening in their world, but I know that there's going to be movement. And I also know that for a lot of clients, come session 6, they will see really great improvement on their DAS scores. And what often happens, people go, oh, that's amazing. My scores have gone down, it's maybe even in the normal range. And they are so happy that they are no longer broken in their minds, that they just want to exit, aka graduate from therapy. It's like, I'm all good. I've done it. I've done the work. Let's celebrate. I'm good to go. I don't need to come back. But what we know is that the nature of therapy, getting that support, having somebody that actually listens to you, makes you feel heard, understood, and validated, that can often lead to very fast symptom improvement. But if we then take that support away all of a sudden, then things come crashing down. So that fast movement between, let's say, session 1 and 6, that's referred to as flight to health in inverted commas. And if you then, as a psychologist, helping professional, say, yeah, good, we want to validate you've done well and we're going to discharge you after session 6, what you're actually doing 9 out of 10 times is setting that client up for failure. Okay, and I'm referring to bread and butter work. There's always exceptions, people. I'm generalizing here, right? But our bread and butter, depression, anxiety, stress clients that come through our doors, they're going to have improvement. But even if they get to the normal range of their scores, there's going to be some type of relapse if what you do is just remove those support barriers. So in my point of view, that is very unethical to do because you know it's going to happen, which is why I already talked to clients about it in session 2, because I want them to know if, and probably it will, your symptoms improve, that there's still going to be more work to do. So we want to stop flight to health occurring because we know that there will be a crash after it. And we want to prevent that. Clinically, we want to prevent that because sometimes that actually worsens what it is that they're dealing with because they feel like failures. They would go, I've tried, and maybe they might even go, oh, psychology doesn't work because I went for 6 sessions, I did all this work, and look, I'm back at square one. We don't want that. We want people to have a good experience with the mental health system, with private practice, but that means that we need to educate them on stuff like flight to health. Hence, that conversation is so important. And because I understand salutogenesis, I can frame it within the flight to health understanding as well in order to prevent that from occurring. And that then segues nicely into the second point here, in that it is really good for relapse prevention in the first instance, right? Because that's what we're doing. If we want to be mindful of flight to health, that also means that the next step is relapse prevention. We want to stop that from happening. But even more so, we want to offer prevention anyway. So you don't have to wait, client out there in the street. You don't have to wait until you've reached rock bottom. Prevention is actually the best medicine. But unfortunately, you don't get Medicare rebates for prevention. And that's the part that I alluded to earlier, that the system, especially the Medicare system, is set up in a way that you need to reach rock bottom. In this instance, rock bottom being need to meet all criteria to get a full diagnosis, to get a mental health care plan in order for you to get rebates. We don't want that. So clinically, it allows clinicians also to look at the role that they can play in the prevention of very severe mental health presentations, which is an important part of the work that we need to do as well. And then thirdly, it really communicates to clients that you deserve more. You deserve more than just the absence of symptoms. You deserve that meaningful, purposeful, functional life, however you describe that. And sometimes that's the hardest part for clients. Depending on their childhood, their life circumstances, they don't know what that could be for them. because they never thought that that is possible. So that is the important job for us as a clinician, to help them put words to that, for them to be able to even acknowledge and allow themselves to think that there's something more, that life could be better, that they deserve better. That is so, so super important. And that to me also again links to the fact that we need to reduce the stigma around mental health as well. Because if you think about it, if people have mental health disorders, put that through the filter, depending on your allied health discipline, if they don't action what is happening for them in their world, they will never get better. They will stay on this left-hand side of the continuum. That's not life. Nobody should stay there because they're too scared, or they're scared of being shamed or judged. So if we can start to talk about mental health in this instance through the filter of salutogenesis, for example, on your social media, on your Instagram page, on your website, from that clinical perspective, to go, you know what, we help people in this side of the continuum as well. We can actually help you with prevention. We can actually just be there to talk to you. That's really going to help reduce that stigma that still exists. I know it's getting better. I think every year it's getting better, especially with platforms such as TikTok, for example. There's a lot more people talking openly about the mental health concerns, but we still have a shit ton of work to do. And salutogenesis is an important part of that work. Let's now talk about the business application. So if we were to look at the business side of private practice through the filter of salutogenesis, what does this mean for your business? So I'm going to again touch on 3 important points here. Again, I'm sure there's more than just 3. First point, if you have a clinical team that understands the concept and the clinical impact of salutogenesis, then that will have a direct positive impact on the client retention within your business. In other words, instead of clients just coming for 6 appointments, they might come for 10. Instead of somebody coming for 10 appointments, they might come for 18. Because we now understand that our job as clinicians is not only to go from dis-ease to the middle of this continuum, but our job is also to then take on phase 2 of helping the client to get to health ease, that meaningful, purposeful life that it is that they want. And why is that good for your business? Because client retention from a financial perspective is much cheaper than new client acquisition, because it costs your business money to acquire a new client. So instead, let's do our jobs well, okay? Let's do our jobs well, make sure the client gets to where they need to be, and that's going to help with that client retention. Second point for the business is that salutogenesis expands your market. Because I'm thinking right now, maybe what a lot of you are doing is marketing towards people that's going to enter your business on the left-hand side of our piece of paper, anywhere between dis-ease and the midpoint of no symptoms or no symptomology sufficient to meet diagnostic criteria. That's where all your marketing is going, right? But now, if you look at this through the salutogenesis filter, you now have this whole other market that you can tap into. Your market has now literally doubled from a business perspective. Now, of course, if you want to tap into this expanding market, people that do not have a mental health diagnosis, but they're not at this right-hand side of health ease, they're somewhere in between. If you want to tap into that market, you need to be mindful of where is that market? What language do I need to use? How do I talk to them? How do I tell them that we are here? But that's a whole expanded market that you now have. So if you're currently looking at your freaking diaries and it's like month after month after month of open appointments, maybe it's time for you to go, let's look at this market. Because there's a shit ton of people sitting in there And I can tell you, and I've said this before, 100 times before, I feel like, I know as a psychologist, I can take any person off the street, anybody with no mental health issues, even the person that tells me my life is perfect, Gerda, I know for a fact I can take them into the therapy room and I can do at least 6 sessions with them where they will get value from it. Because guess what? You, me, everybody, we don't know what we don't know. And there's always a freaking next level. So it's really about going, how do I help those people? How do I find them? How do I talk to them? Because they also deserve help. Now, I know there's some of you that's thinking, but what about the people that's struggling, Gerda? What about the people that has, all these other mental health conditions? Well, I'm not saying don't talk to them, but you also need to look at where's your practice located? What type of practice do you have? Which market is right for your practice? And yes, it feels good to help people with very severe symptomology. I know I worked in that space for a very long time, and it makes the work that you do very salient because you can see how their lives change. But I can tell you, once you've started to work on the other side, you can see it as well. The joy, the happiness, the contentment feels just as good. So this is just my invitation to you to say, is that a market that maybe I want to venture into? Because it's there for you if you choose to also look at that. And then the third point here, very, very important point when it comes to business, is that applying the salutogenic filter to your business enhances sustainability of your business. Why? Because there's 2 really important sustainability aspects here. First, in terms of sustainability in clients, I've just spoken about client retention, but also sustainability in terms of your clinicians. Because as a clinician myself, I know that having a new client come in takes a lot of mental work for me. I don't mind new clients, I love new clients, but mentally there's a lot more work that happens because you need to do an assessment. You need to do a case formulation where you apply everything you know to this person and how you can best help them. And then you need to put together a treatment plan. Now, if your clinicians are only doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever their retention numbers are per client, that means, let's just say 6 on average. Let's say your retention numbers at your practice is 6 per clinician. And I would encourage you to know what those numbers are for a whole of practice and individual clinicians. But let's say it's 6. That means that after every 6 sessions with a specific client, they've got a new client on their caseload. So the number of new clients they have is going to be at a certain level. Now imagine if instead of just taking people from dis-ease to that midpoint, which is from session 1 to 6, and then you go, hang on, let's talk to them. Maybe they want another 4 or 5 sessions, maybe even another 6. That means that clients now stay twice as long with us, which means that there's less new client assessment, case formulation, and treatment planning that needs to happen. So from a burnout prevention perspective with clinicians, it really helps with that sustainability. And I can tell you that if a clinician is able to help somebody from a state of dis-ease all the way to health ease, you know how freaking good that feels to them. I know because I've been there. It feels amazing. And the chances of those people relapsing becomes less because you've done your relapse prevention. Those people have had a great experience with your business. They are probably also people that will refer friends and family to your practice. But coming back to the sustainability for our clinicians, so it's reduced that risk of burnout. And the other thing as well, if you start to tap into the second market that I spoke about earlier, that also allows your clinicians to have a bit more balance in their caseloads. Because again, from a burnout prevention perspective, if all your work is in the dis-ease side of this continuum, you might have a lot of at-risk clients, people with a lot of severe symptomology. So wouldn't it be nice for clinicians to also have clients that come in with presentations that doesn't require that level of intervention? And I've had many of those on the years. Prime example, somebody working in corporate saying, I've come to a fork in the road of my career. I either stay with my current company or I've been offered this other job. What do I do? How do I make this decision objectively? We can have a conversation. I can help them with that. Another example that I've actually had surprisingly a lot of times over the years, so I'm most certainly not breaching confidentiality, but doctors and medical students coming to see me saying that I've got this option between these two specialities. Both have been offered to me. I don't know which one to choose. How do I decide? Because I'm going to make this huge commitment in terms of time and money and energy, and I need to make the right choice. How do I decide? And it's like, I love that. And I feel like it's such a privilege that I can help and facilitate a decision like that for someone. And having clients that come into the business, into the therapy room, and who are entering on the right side of the continuum, again, it supports sustainability from a clinician perspective, that maybe it's not a very dark session. Like, I'm a trauma psychologist. A lot of sessions can get really painful and dark. So it's always been good to be able to have other types of clients where you can go, this is a really light session. This is a really energizing session. And yes, trauma work is energizing at a different level, but you know what I'm saying here, right? So it brings in diversity into the caseload. And always you want to give clinicians options. Maybe some people go, I only want to do trauma. That's perfectly fine as well. But I'm talking here as a general rule, being able to have a caseload for your clinical team that is more balanced, that every client is not a high-risk client. And when you start tapping into that market, the market working towards the health ease from that midpoint, then you are introducing more variety and more sustainability into that caseload for your clinical team. Now that we've spent some time looking at salutogenesis in its clinical application, as well as its application and importance to your business, I want to invite you now to look at a third application. And that is how this applies to you, the practice owner, responsible for the clinical application and the business application. Let's look at you. And maybe you can guess where I'm going with this. Because right now, your business and your experience of your business is sitting somewhere on this exact same continuum. A continuum from dis-ease or disease to healthies or healthy. So ask yourself this: what is your business like right now? Consider things such as, what's your client numbers like? Are your diaries full or not? Are you confident about filling your diaries week after week after week? What's your team capacity like? Do you have a shortage of clinicians? Or maybe you don't have a shortage, but they're not really productive or efficient. So there's a capacity issue. Consider your systems. How efficient is your systems at your business right now? What is your cash flow like? Is it a positive or negative cash flow? Is it a cash flow that keeps you up at night? Or is it a cash flow that you're really confident about? And also, fifth and very importantly, what is your profit like? Are you like just scraping into the black year after year and you're going, well, at least it wasn't a loss? Are you just like hovering around the 5 to 10%? Or do you actually have a good profit margin sitting at around 20, 25, 30%? Based on those growth drivers I've just mentioned, being clients, team, systems, cash flow, and profit, how close is your business potentially to the disease part of this continuum? Or maybe it's actually very close to the health ease part of the continuum. And this is for you to reflect on. There's no judgment here. But I think it's really important for you to also go, this applies here as well. Where is my business? And me as the human being in charge of it, taking on all the risk and responsibility, what is my experience of it? Do I feel like I'm in dis-ease when it comes to my business, or do I feel like I'm in health ease? And whatever your experience is, it's probably an accurate reflection of where your business is at. So I want you to know that there is a continuum. And I also want you to know that if you're currently on the dis-ease part of the continuum, on the left-hand side of our page, where we've been withdrawing this, I want you to know that there is this whole other part of health ease, which is available to you. Just like the clinical clients, just like your clinician team deserves to also be in and operate within the health ease part of the continuum, so do you. And I know it's possible because that's where I'm sitting with my business. I've got a self-running practice. You would have heard me talk about that. I live 6.5, 7 hours on a bad traffic day all the way from my practice. My practice runs in my absence. So when I think about the psych professionals, there's a lot of health ease going on there. It makes me happy. I feel content about it. I feel confident about it. And that's an amazing place to sit at. But also know this, that I know what it feels like to be in dis-ease because I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, never want to go back there. And that's why this has become my life's mission, to help practice owners like you move from dis-ease in your business to health ease. And I'm hoping that this is going to instill some hope for you, because I think it's particularly with us allied health professionals, and I see this a lot with psychologists as well. Because I'm a psychologist, I find most of the practice owners that reach out to work with me are psychology practice owners. They are very self-critical about how well they are doing or how badly they think they're doing. And they often think that they must be the only ones who are struggling in business. Surely nobody else is struggling. And even when people reach out and talk to me about joining the Private Practice Success Academy, they often ask, like, am I too far gone, Gerda? Can you actually help? Is it going to be safe for me to speak up in the Academy Facebook group, on some of the group sessions? Or am I going to be the only one whose business is really shit? Because I do not want to be embarrassed. And I always say, nope, you're going to be in the right room. Yes, in the Academy, there are people who are across that continuum. But you know what? There's a lot of people in there that when they joined, they were in dis-ease. And they're no longer there. They're on the other side of the spectrum now. So there's always a way forward. And I think that's important to know, that that way forward, something better, is available for each and every one of you. And now that I think of that, because I'm thinking of people that's been in the academy 2, 3, 4. We even have somebody that's now been in 5 years. She was one of the first people to join. She's still there today because we've been running for 5 years. Those are the people that see really big results. And for me as a business coach, what I do see when I look at the trends within our membership, for example, a lot of people do come in the dis-ease part, because I think I'm known for being a problem solver as a business coach. I'm known for being able to look underneath the hood, as they say, of your business and going, oh, I can see what's wrong here. I know how to fix this. This is the strategies. Here's the tools, the resources. I give all of that to you. I hold your hand as you implement it. So I am good at helping people grow from dis-ease to that midpoint. But I find what often happens for a lot of practice owners, they go, okay, I think I've now invested enough time, money, and energy into me as the business owner. I'm going to exit myself from the academy or whatever other mastermind they are in, and I'm now going to do the rest of it alone. And I've made a decision over the holidays that I need to be more vocal as well about this, because I always respect somebody's decision when they say, no, I'm good to go. Because I go, you're an adult, you're a business owner. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But then I'm going, why is it so easy for me to advocate for my clinical clients about this, but I'm not doing this with my business coaching clients? And I've been reflecting on this over the holidays, because it's like, I know, yes, it's amazing to use this phrase, we fixed your business. Do you know what I mean with that? We've made all this progress. We've implemented these strategies. You can see things are getting better. Things have turned around. It's like, this is actually a vital stage. Maybe there's been some business flight to health, right? It's exactly the same thing. These are universal concepts. And when flight to health happens in your business and you take away those supports because things are going well, business is never straightforward. When the next big thing happens, you are without support. And just imagine if you're listening to this and you're going, but I'm a business owner and I'm not in dis-ease. I'm actually maybe in the middle somewhere, Gerda. But just imagine what you can do when things are actually going well in your business, when it's already impactful, there's good systems in place, and you've done a lot of those foundational pieces. But to have a coach, a mentor, a consultant standing next to you, having your back, empowering you to think bigger, to scale, to implement with ease, to be supported when things go wrong or when you need to make a big decision, because that's often where things start to go hairy, when practice owners are faced with really big decisions. And these are my helping professionals, and especially the females amongst us, and that's the majority of people I work with. We make a lot of heart-driven decisions, and that's often where things start to go wrong. And I'm not saying you can't be heart driven. You most certainly can, but you need to balance it with the logic, with the numbers, with the data, with a assessment of what the scenario is. What does this mean if I say yes to this? What does it mean if I say no to this? And having somebody to bounce that off really ensures that you stay on that upward trajectory of business growth. And a lot of practice owners tell me, but I don't want a big practice, Gerda. And part of me always thinks it's because they think they shouldn't have it, because then I'm going to be a tall poppy, or that looks and sounds greedy if I say I want a big practice. But you know what? What is big anyway? Define big for me. In our world of small business, a level 5 practice is 8 clinicians. That's a head count. That's not even full-time equivalent. It's a 4-room practice. You can have a profitable, sustainable 4-room practice that supports your life, that looks after your clinicians, and that serves the clients in your community. That is a big practice. So when people say, but I don't want a big practice, I think they're thinking 5 locations, 100 clinicians. Yeah, that sounds like something that's way too much work for me most of the time as well, but it's most certainly doable. I can tell you that. I've got 2 practices myself. I mentor, coach, and consult with practices that have multiple locations, that has 20, 30 clinicians. So you can have whatever you want. I'm thinking that's what I want to really emphasize here, because a lot of times we've got so many I can'ts in our head, even if it is unconscious. Because at the end of the day, you can have whatever you want. So the question that I want to leave you with today is the following. Irrespective of where your business is on our continuum that we've discussed, think about this. What do you really want from your business, from your practice? And if you could tell yourself what that is, and you could actually say it out loud, and I'm going to encourage you to say it out loud. Maybe write it down first, whatever works for you. But I want you to think, what would that be? But what would it be if nobody heard me saying it? Or if nobody saw me writing this? In other words, nobody's there to judge you. Nobody's there to tell you, oh, geez, that's a bit big. Oh, that's a bit scary. Oh, that's a bit over the top. Nobody's there to judge you. And you are also not judging yourself. So you first need to silence that little voice in your head that's telling you can't because you've got young kids, or you can't because you've got other family responsibilities, or you can't because of whatever the reason is. Tell that little voice to shut the hell up. What would your vision then be? And there's no, it's too little or it's too big. It can be whatever you want. Just be honest with yourself. You owe yourself that level of honesty. And once you know what that is, just sit with that. Just sit with it. Let it process. Be mindful of how it feels in your body. Does it feel scary? Does it feel good? Does it feel intimidating? Whatever it feels like, whatever it is, know that it's perfectly fine. Because at the end of the day, you get to decide what you do with your life. You get to decide what you do with your business. But I never want you to dull the dream that is within you. And I'm always here to tell you that you can have your version of the ultimate private practice. because you get to define what that looks like. So that is where I'm going to leave our discussion for today. Thank you so very much for tuning in. And as always, remember that I am here to help you build a practice you can't stop smiling about.